Have you ever felt the weight of a promise, the kind that anchors you to a past you can't outrun? A promise made in the face of loss, a whisper in the dark that becomes a roaring command years later. The hospital waiting room hummed with a low, fluorescent anxiety, each tick of the clock a hammer blow against the fragile peace Hawk was trying to maintain. The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and fear, the kind that clings to sterile surfaces and whispers through the vents. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. All that mattered was the hearing, the fragile thread of hope that chains had woven through the legal system, the truth that needed to be spoken aloud, believed, and finally acted upon. He sat on a hard plastic chair, his leather jacket creaking softly with each movement, a familiar comfort in this alien landscape of linoleum and despair. Around him, the steel wolves were a silent, watchful presence, a pack of guardians who had transformed the sterile waiting room into a makeshift sanctuary. Diesel was brewing coffee in a travel thermos, the rich aroma a small act of defiance against the antiseptic atmosphere. Maven polished her late husband's dog tags, the rhythmic clicking a steady pulse in the quiet room. Each of them carried their own burdens, their own scars, but they stood as one, united by loyalty and the unspoken code that bound them together. Hawk closed his eyes, letting the low hum of the waiting room fade into the background. He saw Lily's face, bruised and fragile, yet somehow resilient. He saw Anna's smile, the way it used to light up a room, the gentle curve of her cheek as she looked at her daughter. And he saw Jake, young and full of life, his arms slung around Hawk's shoulder, their laughter echoing in the dusty air of a forgotten battlefield. The weight of the past pressed down on him, a suffocating blanket of guilt and regret. He had failed them once. He wouldn't fail them again. He remembered the day Jake died, the sterile white walls of the military hospital, the rasp of his friend's breath as he whispered his last request. "Take care of them, Hawk. Promise me you'll take care of them." He had given his word, but war had a way of unraveling even the strongest oaths. He drifted away, lost in his own darkness, leaving Anna and Lily to face the world alone. And now, years later, he was here, trying to make amends, trying to piece together the shattered fragments of a promise he should have kept. The truth was a heavy burden, one that Lily had carried alone for too long. Morrison was a master manipulator, a man who used his position to hide his darkness, who twisted the system to his advantage. But Hawk knew the signs. He'd seen that darkness before, lurking in the shadows of men who thought they were above the law. He knew the only way to fight it was with the truth, with unwavering resolve, and with the unwavering support of those who believed in justice. He looked at Chains, who was pacing back and forth, his silver hair catching the fluorescent light. He was a warrior in a different kind of armor, wielding words and laws instead of guns and grenades. But his heart was the same, fierce, loyal, and unyielding. The bond between them was forged in fire, tempered by loss, and strengthened by the shared understanding that some things were worth fighting for. He knew this would be a battle, a brutal fight against a system that often protected the powerful and ignored the vulnerable. Morrison would bring every weapon he had, lies, manipulation, and the weight of his authority. But Hawk had something more. He had Lily's truth, the unwavering support of the Steel Wolves, and the burning desire to finally keep the promise he had made so long ago. The door to the courtroom loomed before them, a gateway into a world of legal complexities and moral ambiguities. He took a deep breath, letting the weight of the past settle on his shoulders. It was time to face the darkness, to speak the truth, and to fight for the girl who deserved a chance at a new beginning. He stood, his body aching, his spirit weary, but his resolve unbroken. He was Tom Hawk Daniels, and he was here to keep his word. As they stepped into the courtroom, the air crackled with anticipation. Every eye turned toward them. Morrison sat at the plaintiff's table, his face a mask of controlled anger. He was surrounded by lawyers, their expensive suits a stark contrast to Hawk's worn leather jacket. Lily was waiting in a separate room, her presence a silent force that fueled his determination. The judge, a woman with kind eyes and a stern demeanor, called the court to order. The hearing began. The next hours were a blur of legal jargon, accusations, and denials. Morrison's lawyers painted a picture of him as a loving, dedicated father, a pillar of the community who was being unfairly targeted by a vengeful outsider. They presented carefully crafted narratives, distorted truths, and subtle insinuations, trying to discredit Lily's testimony and undermine Hawk's credibility. Chains fought back with unwavering skill, presenting evidence, calling witnesses, and exposing the inconsistencies in Morrison's story. He was a master strategist, dissecting the lies with precision and revealing the ugly truth that lay beneath the surface. Hawk watched, his heart pounding, his fists clenched. He wanted to shout, to scream, to tear down the facade of lies that Morrison had carefully constructed. But he knew he had to remain calm, to trust in Chains, and to wait for his moment to speak. When it was his turn to testify, he walked to the witness stand, his boots echoing in the hushed courtroom. He swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. He looked at the judge, his eyes unwavering, and began to speak. He told the story of Jake, of Anna, of the promise he had made and the regret he had carried for 16 years. He spoke of Lily's courage, of her resilience, and of the darkness she had endured at the hands of Morrison. He didn't try to embellish or exaggerate. He simply told the truth, his voice filled with raw emotion and unwavering conviction. He spoke of love, of loyalty, and of the importance of keeping one's word. And as he spoke, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. The carefully constructed narratives began to crumble, the lies began to unravel, and the truth began to emerge. He could see the doubt in the judge's eyes, the unease in the jurors' faces, and the flicker of fear in Morrison's gaze. When he was finished, the courtroom was silent. Every eye was on him, waiting for the judge to speak. The judge cleared her throat and looked at Morrison, her expression unreadable. "Do you have any questions for Mr. Daniels?" Morrison stood, his face flushed with anger. He tried to discredit Hawk, to undermine his testimony, but his words rang hollow in the face of the truth. He accused Hawk of being a vigilante, of interfering in his family's affairs, of trying to destroy his reputation. But Hawk didn't flinch. He met Morrison's gaze, his eyes filled with unwavering resolve. "This isn't about you," he said, his voice clear and steady. "It's about Lily. It's about protecting her from the man who hurt her, the man who killed her mother." Morrison's face contorted with rage. He lunged toward Hawk, but the bailiffs intervened, restraining him and dragging him back to his seat. The courtroom erupted in chaos. The judge pounded her gavel, demanding order. When the commotion subsided, she turned to the jury, her expression grave. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the testimony. You have seen the evidence. It is now up to you to decide the fate of this child." The jury deliberated for hours. Hawk waited in the hallway, pacing back and forth, his anxiety building with each passing minute. The steel wolves were there, their presence a silent reassurance. He thought of Lily, of Anna, of Jake, and prayed that justice would prevail. Finally, the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom was called to order, and the jury filed back into their seats. The foreman stood, his face pale, and read the verdict. "We find the defendant, Daniel Morrison, guilty of child abuse and the involuntary manslaughter of Anna Morrison." A gasp swept through the courtroom. Morrison's face crumbled, his carefully constructed facade shattered into a million pieces. He was led away in handcuffs, his reign of terror finally over. Relief washed over Hawk, a wave of exhaustion and gratitude. He had done it. He had kept his promise. He had protected Lily. He walked to the room where Lily was waiting, his heart pounding with anticipation. He opened the door and saw her sitting on a chair, her eyes filled with fear and hope. He walked to her and knelt beside her, taking her hand in his. "It's over, Lily," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "He can't hurt you anymore." Tears streamed down her face, tears of relief, tears of joy, tears of healing. She threw her arms around him, clinging to him tightly. "Thank you, Uncle Hawk," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me. Thank you for saving me." He held her close, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. He had found redemption in protecting her, a chance to finally make amends for the mistakes of his past. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that he would be there for her every step of the way. He would help her heal, help her rebuild her life, and help her find happiness again. They walked out of the courtroom together, hand in hand, the steel wolves surrounding them like a protective shield. The reporters swarmed them, cameras flashing, microphones thrust in their faces. But Hawk didn't care. All that mattered was Lily, and the promise he had made to protect her. They walked away from the chaos, away from the darkness, and toward the light. The road ahead was long, but they would face it together with love, loyalty, and unwavering determination. As they drove away, Hawk looked at Lily, her face radiant with hope. He knew that she would be okay. She was strong, she was brave, and she was loved. And he knew that he would always be there for her, no matter what. The healing had begun. And to you, who stayed until the end, through every twist and turn, every heartache and triumph, thank you. Your presence, your support, it means the world. If you found a little bit of healing in this story, a spark of hope in the darkness, consider leaving a like, a comment, a sign that you were here. And if you want more stories of love that saves, heals, and refuses to die, consider subscribing. It's a small gesture, but it helps keep the fire burning, helps me keep writing, keep sharing, keep believing in the power of love to conquer all. May you always find the strength to keep your promises, the courage to fight for what's right, and the love to heal the wounds of the past. And may you always remember that you are not alone. Have you ever felt like your entire world could crumble with a single whispered word? The silence was heavy, thick with the unspoken. It was the kind of space, the kind of comfort only found in people who had survived together. Diesel was dozing in a chair, his snoring a gentle rumble in the background. Maven was knitting something soft and small, a scarf, maybe, her fingers moving with the patience of time itself, each stitch a testament to resilience. Hawk sat among them, the fatigue heavy but clean, like a weight finally lifted from his soul. For the first time in years, the noise in his head felt quieter, a welcome respite from the storm that had raged within him for so long. The engines outside had fallen silent, the aggressive growl replaced by an almost serene stillness. The night was wrapping them in its slow, steady heartbeat, a rhythm that felt both ancient and new. He thought of Lily sleeping upstairs, of the fear that would still haunt her dreams, the echoes of trauma that lingered like shadows in the corners of her mind, and of the healing that would take time, a slow, painstaking process that demanded patience and unwavering support. But he also thought of her courage, her voice, her gray eyes shining even through pain, reflecting a spirit that refused to be extinguished. Hope was fragile, like a delicate flower pushing through concrete, but it was there, alive, flickering, refusing to die. Hawk leaned back against the worn, familiar chair, his gaze drifting toward the window, where rain streaked down the glass, reflecting the glow of parking lot lights in blurred, shimmering patterns. He whispered under his breath, more to the past than the present, a promise carried on the wind. We've got her, Jake. She's going to be okay. And for the first time in a long while, he believed it, truly believed it, not just as a duty, but as a certainty that resonated deep within his bones. The night outside was no longer a storm, but a lullaby, a gentle hymn of loyalty, love, and healing that promised dawn would come, chasing away the darkness and revealing the beauty that still remained. He closed his eyes, and the memory of engines blended into something softer, the sound of family, of promise, of peace waiting just beyond the edge of pain. Morning would bring battle, the challenges and complexities of the world waiting to test their newfound serenity, but tonight, there was calm. And sometimes, calm was enough to begin again, to gather strength and face the future with renewed determination. Morning came soft and gold over the New Mexico sky, painting the hospital windows with light that looked almost merciful, washing away the grime and despair of the previous days. Hawk had spent the night in the waiting room, his leather jacket draped over his shoulders, the quiet hum of machines lulling him into something between sleep and prayer, a liminal space where hope and fear wrestled for dominance. Outside, the steel wolves were still there, coffee cups steaming in their calloused hands, eyes red but steady, their loyalty unwavering, a silent testament to the bonds that held them together. The sun rose, and with it came the promise of truth, the unveiling of secrets that had long been buried. Chains arrived first, sharp as ever, a cup of black coffee in one hand and a folder thick with documents in the other, his movements precise and purposeful. It's time, he said simply, his voice devoid of emotion but filled with resolve, and Hawk nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. No speeches, no bravado, Just purpose, a collective commitment to justice and protection. He stood, rolled his shoulders, and felt every year of his life settle into place, the aches and pains a reminder of battles fought and lessons learned. The soldier in him woke quietly, not in violence, but in clarity, a focused intention to safeguard what was precious. Lily was waiting in her room, already dressed in a simple white hospital gown, her fragility accentuated by the sterile environment. The bruises on her face had faded to pale shadows, a haunting reminder of the trauma she had endured, but her eyes, those gray, luminous eyes, carried something new, something that shone brighter than any pain. Not fear, resolve. She looked at Hawk as he entered, her fingers twisting the edge of her blanket, a nervous habit that betrayed her inner turmoil. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper, but honest and vulnerable. "Good," he said softly, pulling up a chair and meeting her gaze with unwavering sincerity. "Means you care about what's coming. Means you understand the stakes." Her lips trembled, but she smiled, small and brave, a flicker of defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. "Do you think they'll believe me?" she asked, her voice laced with doubt, the fear of rejection palpable in the air. "They'll hear you," he said, voice low and steady, filled with a conviction that he hoped would reassure her. "That's what matters. Sometimes that's how healing starts, when you finally say the truth out loud, when you break the silence and let your voice be heard." When the hearing began, the conference room felt too small for the storm it was about to hold, the tension palpable, the air thick with anticipation. The judge appeared on a laptop screen, calm, sharp-eyed, and patient, her presence a beacon of authority in the room. On one side sat Morrison, his lawyer, and two officers in pressed uniforms, their faces grim, their body language radiating power and intimidation. On the other, Hawk and Chains, with Rebecca standing quietly in the back, her clipboard held tight like a shield, her presence a subtle but powerful force of support. The air was thick with tension, a battleground of truth and lies. Morrison looked every bit the grieving father, clean-shaven, voice smooth, gestures measured, his demeanor carefully crafted to evoke sympathy. He spoke of misunderstanding, of a troubled teenager mourning her mother, of outsiders twisting family matters, painting a picture of a loving family torn apart by tragedy. Every word was a polished lie, and every lie dripped with charm, designed to manipulate and deceive. But when Lily entered, everything changed. The carefully constructed facade began to crumble under the weight of her presence. She was small against the weight of the room, a solitary figure facing a formidable adversary, but her voice, when it came, carried a quiet power that no one could prepare for, a strength born from the depths of her pain. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply told the truth, piece by piece, like someone laying bricks for her own freedom, constructing a pathway to a future where she could finally breathe. The bruises, the broken ribs, the fear that never slept, the constant anxiety that had become her unwelcome companion. The night her mother said she was going to leave him, and the car that never came back, the unanswered questions that haunted her waking hours. Hawk watched her speak, his heart breaking and healing at the same time, witnessing her vulnerability and her resilience, the raw honesty that poured from her soul. She was fragile, yes, like a delicate glass figurine, but she was also fierce, the kind of brave that no training could teach, a courage born from necessity. When Morrison tried to interrupt, to deflect and manipulate, her eyes locked on his, steady and unflinching, piercing through his carefully constructed defenses. "You can lie to them," she said quietly, her voice resonating with a quiet power that silenced the room. "You've been lying my whole life. But you can't lie to me anymore." Chains stood, his voice calm but slicing through the room like truth incarnate, dismantling the web of deceit with unwavering precision. "Your Honor," he said, placing a small USB drive on the table, its contents holding the key to unraveling the truth. This was found in Lily's room, hidden by her mother days before her death. It contains financial records and police reports, evidence of theft, corruption, and money transfers linked to Officer Morrison's personal accounts. Morrison's lawyer jumped up, protesting, shouting about forged evidence, desperately trying to regain control, but the sound was drowned by the clicking of reporters' cameras, eager to capture the unfolding drama. The story was out. The truth, once caged, was free, spreading like wildfire through the room and beyond. For a long moment, the judge said nothing, her silence amplifying the weight of the evidence. Then she looked at Lily, her expression filled with compassion and respect. "You've been very brave," she said gently, her words a balm to Lily's wounded soul. "And you are heard." That sentence, "you are heard," felt like sunlight breaking through years of storm, a validation and acknowledgement after years of being silenced. Hawk closed his eyes for a second, feeling his chest loosen, the weight of responsibility momentarily lifting. He looked across the table at Morrison, whose perfect mask had finally cracked, the facade of grief and innocence shattered. The man's jaw twitched, his hands shaking with rage he could no longer hide, the truth exposed for all to see. "I'm granting temporary guardianship to Hawk Daniels," the judge declared, effective immediately, "and I'm ordering an investigation into the death of Mrs. Morrison." Lily's shoulders trembled, the tension of the past few years finally releasing its grip. For the first time in years, she exhaled without fear, her breath a sigh of relief. Hawk reached for her hand, not as a savior, but as family, a gesture of solidarity and support. "You did it," he whispered, his voice filled with pride and admiration. "You found your voice." The hearing dissolved into chaos after that. Officers escorting Morrison out as his lawyer shouted empty threats, the remnants of power clinging to him as he was led away. But the noise didn't matter anymore. The battle was won. The truth had prevailed. Outside, sunlight poured through the windows, bright and healing, illuminating the path to a brighter future. The steel wolves were waiting in the parking lot, lined up in perfect formation, their presence a silent declaration of their unwavering support. The moment Hawk and Lily stepped outside, the engines ignited one by one, a low, rumbling chorus that vibrated through the air like a heartbeat, a symphony of loyalty and protection. Maven was the first to step forward, her weathered hands holding a small leather jacket stitched with a new patch, Steel Wolf's family. She helped Lily slip it on carefully, her movements gentle as prayer, a blessing bestowed upon a new member of the pack. "Every wolf needs a pack," Maven said softly, her voice filled with warmth and welcome. "Welcome home." Lily looked around at them, men and women of every age, faces marked by time and stories, each scar a testament to their resilience. And she began to cry, not from pain but from something purer, something she hadn't felt in years. Gratitude, belonging, hope. Hawk felt the tears sting behind his own eyes, witnessing the transformation in her, the blossoming of a spirit that had been stifled for too long. "You don't even know me," Lily whispered, her voice choked with emotion, overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and acceptance. Diesel grinned, his smile wide and genuine. "We know enough. You're Jake's daughter. That makes you ours." The engines thundered louder, a wall of sound rising into the bright morning, a celebration of freedom and family. People gathered along the sidewalk, filming on their phones, drawn to something they couldn't quite name. Not violence, but love, loud and unapologetic, a force that defied expectations. Hawk climbed onto his Harley, the familiar weight grounding him, and held out a gloved hand to Lily. "Ready?" he asked, his eyes filled with unspoken promise. She hesitated only for a moment before placing her hand in his, her grip firm and confident. "Yeah," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I'm ready." The convoy rolled forward slowly, 97 motorcycles gleaming under the sunlight, a procession of hope and healing. Hawk led, Lily holding tight behind him, her presence a comforting weight against his back. The road stretched out before them, long, open, and golden, beckoning them toward a future filled with possibilities. She leaned against his back, and he felt the small rhythm of her breathing, the rhythm of life rediscovering its strength, the steady pulse of resilience. As the miles slipped by, the desert opened like an old wound learning to heal, the harsh landscape softened by the golden light. The horizon shimmered with possibility, promising a fresh start, a chance to rebuild. Hawk thought of Jake, of promises made in blood and kept with love, the unwavering loyalty that had bound them together. He thought of Anna, of her laughter, her kindness, her fierce spirit that lived on in her daughter, a legacy of strength and compassion. He whispered into the wind, a message carried on the breeze. We did it. She's safe now. Lily closed her eyes, feeling the wind wash over her face like freedom, carrying away the fear and the pain. For the first time in years, she wasn't running, wasn't hiding, wasn't looking over her shoulder. She was being carried home, embraced by a family she never knew she had. The convoy cut through the desert, a river of light moving towards something new, something better. And as they rode, the world seemed a little softer, the air warmer, the sky wider, as if love itself had opened the road before them, clearing the path to healing and wholeness. Healing doesn't always come quietly. Sometimes it roars, like the engines of 97 motorcycles shattering the silence of the desert. Sometimes it wears leather and rides with the sunrise, defying expectations and challenging perceptions. And on that morning, with the world stretching endless ahead, Hawk finally understood. Redemption wasn't found in forgetting the past, in erasing the pain. It was in keeping a promise that refused to die, in honoring the bonds of love and loyalty that transcended time and tragedy. The desert wind rose, carrying the hum of engines and the faint laughter of a girl who had learned to believe again, a melody of hope echoing through the canyons. The ride continued, steady and sure, toward a future built not from sorrow, but from love that endured, fierce, forgiving, and forever free. The highway unfurled beneath them like a quiet hymn, each mile a verse in a song only they could hear, a testament to their shared journey. The sun had risen fully now, spilling honey-colored light across the desert, as if the world itself was trying to apologize for all it had taken, offering a glimmer of grace and forgiveness. Hawk felt Lily's small hands gripping his jacket from behind, her heartbeat pressed against his back, steadying both of them, anchoring them to the present moment. Every vibration of the Harley, every gust of wind, seemed to whisper the same thing. You're safe now. You're free. They didn't speak as they rode. Words weren't needed. The desert spoke for them. The wide open sky, the smell of dust and sage, the rhythm of wind carrying away fear, the silent language of belonging. It was strange how healing didn't feel like triumph but stillness, like the soft moment after a storm when you realize the world is still standing, when you can finally breathe without the weight of anxiety. When they finally crossed into Arizona, Hawk turned off the main road, leading the convoy toward a quiet stretch of land where the desert opened wide and wild, a place where they could truly be themselves. His home stood alone at the end of the dirt path, a small wooden cabin, weathered but solid, surrounded by half-finished bikes and the ghosts of old sunsets, a sanctuary built on solitude and resilience. The engines fell silent one by one until all that was left was the sound of the wind weaving through the Joshua trees, a gentle whisper that filled the silence with a sense of peace. Lily slid off the Harley, her legs trembling from the ride, but her eyes alight with wonder, taking in the simple beauty of the landscape. "This is where you live?" she asked softly, her voice filled with curiosity. "Yeah," Hawk said, his gaze following hers. "It's not much, but it's honest. It's safe." The other bikers began to dismount, stretching, laughing quietly, the way soldiers do after a battle they've won but still can't believe, the relief palpable in the air. Diesel was already unloading supplies, Maven fussing over Lily like a grandmother who had just found her lost child, showering her with affection and care. Someone handed Hawk a cup of coffee, strong enough to wake the dead, and he took it with a small nod of thanks, the familiar warmth grounding him. He watched Lily as she wandered toward the porch, her steps uncertain, her gaze lingering on the rusted tools, the old guitar leaning against the wall, the photo of her father pinned above the door, each object a fragment of a life she was only beginning to understand. She stopped in front of it, her fingers brushing the frame, her touch reverent. "He was so young," she murmured, her voice filled with sadness. "So were we," Hawk said behind her, his voice gentle, roughened by time. "He never stopped talking about you, you know. Said you had his courage and your mother's heart." Her lips trembled, but she smiled, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Do you think he'd be proud of me?" "He already is," Hawk said, his voice filled with conviction. "He always was." The words settled over them like sunlight, warming them from the inside out. For a long while, neither spoke, content to simply exist in the shared silence, the connection between them growing stronger with each passing moment. The others gave them space, setting up tents, fixing food, pretending not to notice the quiet healing happening between the two souls at the porch, respecting their need for privacy. Later, as the day faded, the steel wolves gathered around a small fire in front of the house, the flames casting dancing shadows on their faces. The air was cooler now, the desert sky painted in watercolor shades of rose and gold, a breathtaking display of natural beauty. The laughter was softer, easy, like it belonged there, a melody of camaraderie and contentment. Hawk sat on the steps with Lily beside him, her cast resting in her lap, her face glowing in the firelight, the scars of her past slowly fading. "Do you miss them?" she asked suddenly, her voice a soft whisper. "The ones you lost." Hawk stared into the flames for a moment, his expression thoughtful, the memories of those he had loved and lost flooding his mind. "Every day," he said, his voice honest and vulnerable. "But I stopped letting the pain tell the story. Now I let the love do that instead." She nodded, understanding in a way only someone who had lost too much could, the shared experience forging a deeper connection between them. "I want to learn how to do that too," she whispered, her voice filled with determination. "You already are," he said, his voice a soft thread between them. "You spoke your truth. You chose to live. That's the first step to healing." Lily leaned her head against his shoulder, tentative at first, then certain, finding comfort in his presence. Hawk stilled, surprised by how natural it felt, how easily she had found a place in his heart. The fire cracked softly, and the scent of mesquite drifted through the air, mingling with laughter from the camp, creating a sense of warmth and belonging. It felt like family, rough around the edges, but real, imperfect but genuine. When the stars came out, they looked impossibly close, like something you could reach if you just believed hard enough, their brilliance illuminating the darkness. Lily tilted her head back, her eyes wide with wonder. "Mom used to say the stars were memories," she said, her voice filled with reverence. "That when people we love die, they turn into light so we don't have to be afraid of the dark." Hawk's throat tightened, touched by the simple beauty of her belief. "She wasn't wrong," he said, his voice filled with emotion. They sat like that for a long time, just breathing, just existing, the silence filled with unspoken emotions, the kind of silence that heals instead of hurts. Before she went inside to rest, Lily turned to him and said, "Thank you for coming for me. Everyone thought I was lying, but you believed me." Hawk met her gaze, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Because your father once believed in me. I just passed it on." That night, when the others slept, Hawk stayed outside, the desert wind brushing softly against his face, carrying the scent of sage and the whispers of forgotten dreams. He looked up at the same stars Lily had spoken of, and for the first time in years, he whispered not out of guilt but peace, his heart filled with a quiet contentment. "She's safe now, Jake. You can rest." Inside the small guest room, Lily was asleep, her breathing even, her cast resting beside the jacket the wolves had given her, a symbol of her belonging. In the dim light, her face looked younger, lighter, like the world had finally stopped demanding her strength for a while, allowing her to simply rest and heal. Hawk closed his eyes and listened to the hum of night, the cicadas, the sigh of wind, the distant rumble of someone's dream, the symphony of the desert. He thought of all the scars the world left on people, of how love, real love, wasn't about erasing pain, but about standing beside it until it softened, about offering comfort and support in the face of adversity. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, investigations, headlines, the complexities of the outside world encroaching on their newfound peace. But tonight, there was only this, the quiet of a promise kept, the warmth of a life reclaimed, the fragile peace of two broken souls beginning to heal. He leaned back, the firelight flickering across his weathered face, and felt something he hadn't in years, contentment, pure and simple, a sense of gratitude for the simple things in life. Around him, his brothers slept, their shadows long and loyal in the starlight, their presence a constant source of strength. The desert was still, but alive, humming with unseen grace, its vastness a reminder of the endless possibilities that lay ahead. Somewhere inside the house, a soft melody drifted from the radio, an old country song about home and forgiveness, its lyrics resonating with the emotions that filled the air. Hawk smiled faintly. Maybe that was what this was, after all, not an ending, but a return, a journey back to oneself and to the bonds that truly mattered. When dawn came again, it would find them stronger, their spirits renewed. The past would still ache, but the ache would mean they had survived it, that they had learned to carry their scars with grace. And as the first faint line of morning light touched the horizon, Hawk whispered to the wind, "We're still here." And that's enough. The world didn't answer, but the breeze that passed over him felt almost like a blessing, gentle, steady, and healing, carrying with it the promise that no matter how dark the night, love always finds its way home. The days that followed came like a soft dawn, slow, tender, and filled with the kind of silence that doesn't ache anymore, a comfortable stillness that allowed them to breathe and heal. The house, once a place of solitude and ghosts, began to breathe again, filled with the warmth of companionship and the echoes of laughter. The sound of Lily's laughter mingled with the hum of engines and the scent of coffee brewing on the stove, creating a symphony of everyday life that filled Hawk's heart with a quiet joy. Hawk found himself waking before sunrise not out of habit, but out of peace, eager to greet the new day and all the possibilities it held. He'd sit on the porch with his mug, watching the light crawl across the desert, and think of how fragile and miraculous healing could be, how even the deepest wounds could begin to mend with time and love. Lily settled into her new rhythm quietly, like someone learning how to live inside her own skin again, discovering a sense of self that had been buried beneath years of trauma. Some mornings, she'd sit on the porch steps, sketching in an old notebook Hawk had found in a drawer, capturing the beauty of the desert landscape with her artistic eye. Other times, she'd help Maven cook, listening to the older woman's stories of wild roads and impossible love, learning about a life filled with adventure and resilience. At night, she'd wander outside to watch the stars, sometimes whispering to the wind, as if speaking to her mother, sharing her hopes and fears with the silent universe. Hawk would pretend not to hear, respecting her need for privacy, but every word found him anyway, resonating with the emotions that filled his own heart. It amazed him how resilience could look like softness, how strength could wear the face of a 16-year-old girl who'd survived what should have broken her, how she had found the courage to face the darkness and emerge stronger on the other side. She still had nightmares sometimes, the echoes of her past haunting her dreams. Hawk would wake to the sound of her breathing quick and uneven, and he'd stand quietly outside her door, listening to the gentle sobs, waiting until the rhythm steadied again, offering silent support without intruding on her pain. He never intruded, never pushed her to talk, understanding that healing, he knew, wasn't something you could force, it had to unfold like morning light. Gentle, certain, patient. One afternoon, while the others were working on their bikes out back, Lily wandered into the garage, her curiosity piqued by the scent of oil and the sight of the unfinished machines. She looked around at the half-finished machines, the shelves cluttered with tools and old memories, and smiled faintly, a sense of familiarity washing over her. "You never finished that one," she said, pointing to a silver Harley in the corner, its frame gleaming but incomplete, a testament to a project left undone. Hawk turned from the workbench, a small grin tugging at his lips, surprised by her interest. "Been meaning to," he said, his voice filled with a hint of challenge. "Just needed a reason." She tilted her head, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "What kind of reason?" "Something worth finishing for," he said, his gaze meeting hers, the unspoken words hanging in the air between them. She didn't answer, but her smile deepened, a quiet, knowing thing, a silent acknowledgement of the connection that was growing between them. Together they worked in easy silence, their movements synchronized, their shared purpose creating a sense of harmony. Hawk showed her how to tighten the bolts, how to steady her wrist, how to listen to the rhythm of the machine, passing on his knowledge and his passion. Her laughter came more easily now, echoing through the garage like sunlight breaking through dust, filling the space with a sense of lightness. There were moments when Hawk would glance at her and see flashes of Jake's grin, Anna's eyes, and something entirely her own, the start of a new story, a unique blend of the past and the present. As the bike began to take shape, so did something else, a quiet trust between them, built not from words but from presence, from shared experiences and unwavering support. Sometimes healing wasn't about talking through pain, but about building something new with the same hands that once held grief, about transforming sorrow into strength. When the bike was finally finished, its engine purred like a heartbeat, a testament to their shared effort and the bond they had forged. Hawk stood back, wiping sweat and oil from his hands, watching as Lily traced her fingers over the chrome, her eyes filled with admiration. "What's her name?" she asked, her voice soft with anticipation. He smiled, his heart swelling with affection. "You tell me." She thought for a moment, her eyes bright, her imagination soaring. "Hope," she said softly, her voice filled with conviction. The words settled into the air like a prayer, a blessing bestowed upon their creation. Hawk nodded, his throat tightening with emotion, his heart overflowing with gratitude. "Then Hope it is." That evening, the Steel Wolves gathered again for dinner, their laughter carrying into the fading light, a melody of camaraderie and contentment. Plates clinked, music played low from an old radio, and for the first time in years, Hawk allowed himself to feel something he'd long buried. Belonging, a sense of connection to something larger than himself. He watched Lily sitting between Maven and Diesel, laughing over some story, her shoulders finally relaxed, her smile unguarded, her eyes shining with joy. It was a small miracle, one born not from rescue, but from living again, from embracing the present and finding beauty in the everyday. Later, when the desert turned silver under the moon, Hawk found her sitting alone by the fire pit, the jacket they'd given her wrapped tight around her shoulders, seeking warmth and comfort in the cool night air. He joined her, the two of them staring into the flames that crackled softly against the quiet, their shared silence a testament to the bond that connected them. "She'd like it here," Lily said, her gaze far away, lost in memories of her mother. "Mom, she always wanted a place that felt like home. She'd be proud of you," Hawk said, his voice filled with sincerity. "You're her courage, her strength." Lily turned to him, her expression open, fragile, real, the pain of her past still etched on her face. "Do you ever stop missing people?" "No," he said after a moment, his voice filled with honesty. "You just learn to love them differently. Some stay in your heart so deeply that missing them becomes a kind of company, a reminder of the love that still endures." She nodded, tears shining but not falling, her grief a constant companion, but one that she was learning to carry with grace. "Sometimes I think I can still feel her, like she's right here." "She is," Hawk whispered, his voice filled with conviction. "Every time you smile, every time you choose to live instead of hide. That's her, still fighting through you, still guiding you on your path." They sat in silence again, the desert stretching infinite and gentle around them, the stars above seeming closer that night, as if listening to their unspoken thoughts. The firelight reflected in Lily's eyes, and Hawk thought how strange it was that love could exist in so many forms: friendship, memory, promise, and still feel infinite, capable of healing even the deepest wounds. When she finally stood to go inside, she paused beside him, her hand brushing against his arm. "You know," she said softly, her voice filled with unspoken emotion, "you don't have to be alone anymore." He looked up at her, a little startled, then smiled faintly, his heart filled with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. "Neither do you." After she disappeared inside, Hawk stayed by the dying fire, staring at the embers glowing like quiet hearts, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. He felt something shift inside him, not closure, but release, a letting go of the guilt and the pain that had haunted him for so long. The kind of peace that comes when you finally understand that some promises were never meant to end. They were meant to change shape and become something new, something stronger, something more beautiful. In the distance, he could hear the faint sound of engines, the wolves preparing for a night ride under the stars, seeking solace and camaraderie in the open road. Diesel's laughter echoed, Maven's voice humming an old tune, the sounds of life filling the silence with a sense of hope. Life, in all its imperfect beauty, was still moving forward, and he was finally ready to move with it. Hawk stood, stretching, the night air cool against his skin, invigorating his senses. He glanced toward the house where Lily slept, a small light still glowing in her room, a beacon of hope in the darkness, and whispered, "Rest easy, kid. You've already come farther than most ever do." As he walked toward his bike, the desert wind brushed past, carrying the warmth of fire and the scent of rain, the promise of a new day. He closed his eyes for a moment and let it sink into him, the quiet proof that redemption wasn't a miracle. It was a choice, made again and again in the small hours of life, a commitment to love and healing. When the steel wolves rode out under the moon that night, the engines hummed not with fury, but with grace, their roar a song of freedom and resilience. The road shimmered ahead, endless and forgiving, beckoning them toward new adventures. And Hawk felt something sacred in the rhythm of it, the way life kept offering second chances to those who dared to love through the pain, the opportunity to rebuild and reclaim their lives. He didn't look back at the house, because he didn't need to. He already knew what waited there: peace, laughter, and the beginning of a gentler tomorrow, a future built on love and hope. And somewhere between the roar of the wind and the whisper of the stars, he finally felt free, not from his promise, but because of it, because he had honored his commitment and found a new purpose in protecting and guiding Lily. The night carried them forward, a long river of light in the desert, and for the first time in years, Hawk smiled, not out of memory or duty, but because hope, fragile and real, had found its way home, illuminating the path to a brighter future. Morning came like a quiet promise, soft and golden, touching everything it could with gentle light, washing away the darkness and revealing the beauty that remained. The desert was still wet from a night rain, and the scent of it lingered, clean, alive, forgiving, a refreshing aroma that filled the air. Hawk stood on the porch with a mug in his hand, watching the sun rise over the red ridge, painting the sky with vibrant colors. The world was silent except for the low rumble of distant engines as the wolves began to stir, their laughter echoing faintly against the hills, creating a melody of camaraderie and contentment. He hadn't heard laughter like that around this place in years. It used to be a workshop of ghosts. Now it sounded like family, a testament to the healing power of love and belonging. Inside, Lily was still asleep, her face relaxed and peaceful, the shadows of her past momentarily forgotten, her dreams filled with hope and the promise of a new beginning. If you found solace in this journey of healing and found yourself rooting for Hawk and Lily, please consider giving this a like. Your support helps share stories of resilience and hope. Feel free to leave a comment sharing your own experiences with healing or what resonated with you most. And if you'd like to join this growing family, subscribe to stay updated on future stories of love, loss, and the enduring power of the human spirit. A heartfelt thank you to you for being here, for listening, and for sharing this moment. May your own path be filled with healing and light. Have you ever felt like the world was pressing in on you, a weight so heavy it steals your breath? That feeling, that's where this story begins. Lily was packing her small bag. The air in the room hung thick with anticipation, a nervous hum that mirrored the flutter in her own chest. Dawn had broken hours ago, yet the tendrils of anxiety still clung to her, a constant reminder of the appointment looming, the court, the psychologist, the daunting task of piecing together a life shattered. The heavy cast that had imprisoned her wrist was now a ghost, replaced by a pale, delicate scar, a roadmap of survival etched onto her skin. She moved with a measured grace, each step deliberate, the phantom pain a muted echo in her bones. But there was no fear in her movements, only the unwavering determination to move forward. As she stepped out of the shadows, the morning sun spilled across her, bathing her in a warm, golden light. In that instant, Hawk saw a flicker of her parents in her, the quiet, unyielding strength they had possessed, a strength that had weathered loss, endured years of suffocating silence, and survived a pain that would have crushed lesser beings. "You're leaving early," Hawk said, his voice a low rumble, roughened by years of hard living but laced with a profound warmth. She nodded, her fingers tightening around the worn leather of her jacket. "Chains says the investigation will take months, but he thinks I'll win." Hawk's gaze softened. "You already did," he said, his words simple yet resonant with unwavering conviction. A fragile smile touched her lips, small and tentative, like a flower tentatively unfurling in the spring. She looked at him then, That particular look daughters reserve for fathers they have finally come to trust, a mixture of vulnerability and burgeoning hope. You really think so? I know so. Hawk affirmed, his voice firm. You're free now, Lily. What you do next, that's all yours. The canvas is blank, the paints are ready. Choose your colors wisely, girl. She hesitated, a shadow of uncertainty clouding her eyes, then took a deep, cleansing breath, drawing strength from the very air around her. I don't know what to do first. The words were barely a whisper, a confession of the lost girl still buried beneath layers of resilience. A low chuckle rumbled from Hawk's chest, a sound that was both broken and surprisingly healing. Start with breakfast. Everything's easier after eggs and coffee. The corners of her mouth tilted upwards, and a genuine laugh escaped her lips, a sound so pure and unburdened that it reverberated through the air like a chime. For Hawk, that sound alone was worth every sleepless night, every scar etched onto his own soul, every mile of open road he had traversed in his life. It was the kind of laughter that mended things you didn't even realize were broken, a balm for the deepest wounds. Slowly, the others emerged, drawn by the warmth of the moment. They packed their gear with practiced efficiency, tidying up the remnants of their temporary sanctuary, their farewells a symphony of quiet affection. Diesel enveloped Lily in a bear hug, lifting her off the ground with surprising strength, his gruff exterior momentarily crumbling as tears glistened in his eyes. Maven, ever the enigmatic observer, presented her with a delicate necklace, a tiny silver wolf pendant glinting in the light. He whispered words of courage and grace, his voice barely audible but resonating with heartfelt sincerity. Even Reaper, the quietest and most introspective of the group, pressed a worn book into her hands, its pages dog-eared and underlined with care. For the road ahead, he murmured, his eyes conveying a depth of emotion he rarely revealed. Hawk, however, remained a man of few words. He didn't need grand gestures or elaborate speeches. His presence alone was a testament to his unwavering devotion. As Lily climbed onto the small motorcycle the club had painstakingly rebuilt just for her, a miniature Harley, gleaming silver and christened Hope, he stood behind her, his hands steadying the seat, a silent promise of support. Don't forget what this feels like, he said softly, his voice barely audible above the early morning breeze. The wind, the sky, the freedom. They belong to you now, Lily. Cling to them. I won't, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, the weight of gratitude almost overwhelming. When she started the engine, it purred like a heartbeat, a steady rhythm of hope and resilience. The wolves fell into formation behind her, not as protectors this time, but as witnesses, as a brotherhood honoring her rebirth. This ride wasn't about rescue anymore. It was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a celebration of a new beginning. Hawk rode beside her as they pulled onto the open road, the vast expanse of the desert stretching endlessly before them, an invitation to a future unwritten. For a long while, they rode in comfortable silence, the world around them too immense and breathtaking for words. The wind swirled around them like a symphony, carrying away the echoes of the past, the pain and the darkness that had haunted them for so long. At a crossroads, Lily slowed, her eyes searching for Hawk's. Uncle Hawk, she called out, her voice amplified above the roar of the engines. He turned his head slightly, his gaze locking with hers, a silent acknowledgement of the profound connection they shared. Thank you, she said, her voice choked with emotion, a torrent of gratitude overflowing. Thank you for finding me, for believing me when no one else did, for keeping your promise. A slow smile spread across Hawk's weathered face, the kind of smile that can only come after years of silence and suppressed emotion, a smile that spoke volumes without uttering a single word. You kept yours too, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You stayed brave, Lily. You never gave up. They parted ways at that intersection, a poignant farewell marked by unspoken affection and shared understanding. Lily turned toward the city, where her new life awaited, a blank canvas shimmering with possibility. Hawk turned back toward the horizon, his gaze drawn to the vast, unforgiving landscape that had always been his home, his sanctuary. The wolves split their formation, some following Lily to the county line, a silent guard ensuring her safe passage, while others remained with Hawk, drawn to his quiet strength and unwavering loyalty. The road forked, but the bond that had forged them together remained unbroken, an invisible thread connecting their hearts. As the distance between them grew, Hawk watched Lily's shrinking figure in his rearview mirror. Her silver motorcycle glinted under the relentless morning sun, a beacon of hope in the desolate landscape. Her jacket fluttered behind her like a flag of victory, a symbol of her triumph over unimaginable adversity. She looked so small, so fragile, and yet so infinitely strong, a living testament to the fact that even the most broken things can still move forward, that pain can be transformed into light if carried with courage and grace. When she finally disappeared from view, swallowed by the vastness of the desert, Hawk slowed to a stop, pulling his motorcycle onto the shoulder of the road. The others rode ahead, respecting his need for solitude, understanding the weight of the moment. The desert stretched out on every side, an endless expanse of sand and scrub, vast and eerily quiet. He killed the engine, silencing the mechanical roar, and listened to the wind whisper through the sparse brush, a mournful song of solitude and freedom. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried out, its voice sharp and lonely and impossibly free. He closed his eyes and took a deep, cleansing breath, filling his lungs with the dry desert air. The pain was still there, a dull ache in his bones, a constant companion. But it didn't bite anymore, it didn't consume him. It had become a part of him, a hum, soft and human, like the fading echo of a story that had finally found its ending. He thought of Jake, his fallen brother, of the promise he had made over a folded flag, a promise to protect his daughter. He thought of Anna's smile, her unwavering spirit, and of the young woman Lily had become, a testament to her own resilience and inner strength. And he realized something profound. He wasn't just keeping a promise anymore. He was a part of it. He was woven into the fabric of their lives, bound by love and loyalty. He was part of the love that refused to end, the love that defied death and despair. The horizon shimmered in front of him, bathed in the golden light of the rising sun, endless and warm, an invitation to a future he hadn't dared to imagine. He started the engine again, feeling the familiar vibration under his hands, steady, alive, a reassuring pulse in the silence. "Guess we did all right," he murmured to the wind, his voice caught somewhere between a prayer and a heartfelt expression of gratitude. He turned his motorcycle around and rode slowly back toward the rising sun, the light pouring over him like a benediction, a cleansing wave of forgiveness and hope. He didn't know what tomorrow would hold, what challenges lay ahead, but for once in his life, he didn't need to. He had done his part, he had kept his promise, and he had witnessed the rebirth of a soul. Some stories don't end in spectacular fireworks, in grand pronouncements, or triumphant declarations. They end in quiet peace, in the gentle acceptance of what is, and the hopeful anticipation of what could be. And peace, he had learned through years of loss and struggle, was the most beautiful victory of all, a hard-won treasure more precious than any gold. The road stretched before him, golden and quiet, an invitation to continue the journey. Behind him, dust rose and shimmered in the morning light, slowly dissolving into the vast expanse of the sky, a visual representation of the past fading into memory. Ahead, the world opened like a wound finally healed, revealing the promise of a brighter future. And as the day stretched wide and full of untold possibilities, Hawk whispered to no one and to everyone at once. His voice carried on the wind, a message of hope and resilience. If you ever get lost, just keep riding. Love will find you again. It always does. If this story resonated with you, if it touched something deep within your soul, if it reminded you of someone you've lost or someone you still desperately hope to find, leave a small sign of your presence before you go. A like, a comment, a thought shared in the vast digital landscape. They matter more than you can possibly imagine, a beacon of connection in a world that often feels isolating. And if you believe, like Hawk did, that promises still hold power, that kindness can heal the broken places in the world, then stay a while. Subscribe to this channel, share this story with others, and become a part of the movement to spread light and hope in a world that desperately needs it. Because sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can become the light that guides someone home, a lifeline in the darkness. May your road be kind, filled with unexpected blessings and moments of profound beauty. May your heart remain steady, unwavering in the face of adversity, and may your soul be brave enough to love again, to open itself to the possibility of connection and joy. Wherever you're riding tonight, whether it's a literal journey or a metaphorical one, may you always find your way back to the light, back to the warmth of love and belonging. And may you never forget that even in the darkest of times, hope remains, a flickering flame that can ignite a fire within your soul.